We've got breaking news out of college football. Got a new number one of the AP poll. Ohio State has risen to the top spot after beating last week's number one, Texas, at the Shoe Saturday. They received 55 of a possible 66 first-place votes. Longhorns fell to number 7 after the loss in Columbus. LSU up to number 3 after winning the battle for Death Valley against Clemson. Miami also rising up the board, going from 10 to 5 following their big win over Notre Dame at Hard Rock Stadium. And here's a look at 11 through 20. Florida State, by virtue of their win over Alabama, who was number 8 at the time, comes into the rankings after not being ranked in the preseason. And you see Alabama, you don't, because they've fallen outside of the top 20. I mentioned 8 coming into that game as 2 touchdown favorites in Tallahassee against the Seminoles. They have dropped from 8 all the way to 21 in the AP Top 25. I'm Tommy Tran with Chip Patterson and Brad Crawford here to talk about the new AP poll, and really also going to frame it based off of the 3 top 10 matchups that we had over the weekend. Again, we haven't had that in the regular season since 2017. Chip, I'm going to give you first word. You and I were here on set breaking down 1v3. Ohio State goes up to number 1. Got any problems with that?
No, it is my decision as well, Tommy. You know, on the CBS Sports 136, it was my prediction that Ohio State would take over the number 1 spot. But I'm going to give my my coworker here, my friend Brad Crawford, some credit. He said that he thought Ohio State would be a near unanimous number 1. I thought that some of those Penn State voters, 23 of them, in fact, who had the Nittany Lions number 1 on their ballot in the preseason, they might hold on to that with some diamond hands. Brad, you're right on that one. 55 is a big first-place vote number. The Buckeyes getting a lot of support from even those who weren't necessarily bought in. So from 11 first-place votes up to 55, it is my decision. I agree with it, and even more of a consensus than I realized. So for Ohio State, now you jump into the driver's seat. Now you are controlling the college football conversation, just like you did when you won the national championship.
I mean, Ohio State and this new-look defense with 7 new starters, Chip, made Texas look human. I mean, Arch Manning, for 3.5 quarters, had under 50 yards passing before he finally completed a couple balls in the fourth quarter and got up over 100. But Ohio State dominated that game largely from start to finish, nearly had a shutout. I thought Caleb Downs was just a perfect player in that secondary, sort of shading each way some of these top-end Texas wideouts. And Ohio State's defensive front, the main question I had for the Buckeyes coming into this season, how do they replace those guys? They dominated up front, man. They pushed Texas off the ball. Texas run game never really got into a rhythm like we're used to seeing under Sark. So Ohio State, I think undoubtedly, after week 1, is the nation's top team.
Matt Patricia calling a great game. How about the other side of the ball, though, for you, Brad? What reservations, if any, do you have on the offensive side of the ball, given what we saw from Julian Sayin there and Jeremiah Smith and company?
Yeah, I mean, Carnell Tate with an incredible one-on-one catch. Jeremiah Smith didn't even score, and they were able to beat Texas. I do like how Brian Hartline, the new OC there, and we know Ryan Day's probably calling the plays, but they made it a point early to try to get Jeremiah Smith the football. Various slot screens, balls across the middle. I think he had 6 catches, had a couple drops. But I like the idea of force-feeding the best player in the country. Now, that said, the 2 running backs behind Julian Sayin at quarterback, I wasn't all that impressed. When you lose Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, 2,000-yard guys that you really leaned on late during the 2024 season, I think they're going to have to see more production from the backfield moving forward.
One thing that I will give a lot of credit to Ohio State's offense for is I thought that they knew their offensive line was a strength. They saw it in some of their short yardage situations. And, of course, when they got down there near the goal line, they gave it to C.J. Donaldson and let him run behind that group. Tommy, as I mentioned to you on Saturday, that was some of the buzz and the narrative that we had heard coming out of Ohio State camp, is that the coaching staff felt like they were healthier and a little bit deeper along the offensive line than they had been in quite some time. And that Texas defensive front is no joke. They've got All-Americans at every level. They've got big bodies. I mean, this is just a remarkable statement. So for Ohio State, they did not put a lot on Julian Sayan's plate. They did not ask him to go out there and save the day. And I think that for Ohio State, they are going to be a much more explosive offense at the end of the season than they are right now. But what a luxury it is that you've got that phenomenal offensive line ready to keep him protected so that he doesn't feel like he's under duress. Because if they could keep it blocked up against Texas, guys, they're going to keep it blocked up against almost everybody.
And there's going to be a theme with the teams that won and the teams that lost, especially in the fashion that we saw the top 10 teams, Texas, Notre Dame, Clemson. They didn't drop far. So let's talk about UT, Brad, here. A lot of the conversation had been surrounding Arch Manning. We're at like a day or two removed. It's interesting because I hear two different camps, right? One camp was like they almost got shut out, and then there's another camp that says they're actually one drive away from tying the game. Where are you at when it comes to the Longhorns after their loss?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle. I still think this is a team that can get it back together and win the SEC this season. I'm probably not picking that any longer after seeing that happen Saturday. But Arch Manning threw too many fastballs. Like, he came in like a closer and just every ball was just airmailed, and he threw it too hard at his intended targets. Ryan Wingo was wide open several times over the middle, including on a critical fourth down play in the red zone. And Arch Manning didn't look his way. Steve Sarkisian said after the game, you have to go to number 5 when that play is called. So I would expect Arch Manning to settle down. I'm not selling my Arch Manning stock, and I would advise those who don't have any right now, go ahead and buy it while it's low, because he's going to have good numbers here in a few months.
Chip, I want to get to you in terms of Steve Sarkisian after the loss in Columbus. He was talking about, hey, this loss is not going to kill us. It's probably not going to kill any of the teams that lost there in week 1, because he didn't think at media days that an undefeated team was going to win the college football playoff, basically saying we've got time to turn things around. They've got San Jose State next, getting ready for league play. What would you like to see out of Texas here?
I'd like to see a more a more effective play out of the wide receivers. Right now, I don't think that Texas has the wide receiver play to scare a top-level college football playoff caliber defense. You know, we had looked at Ryan Wingo, so explosive, so fast, so athletic. DeAndre Moore had been very good, but Parker Livingstone as one of the top wide receiving options was a little bit of a surprise. And some of that is going to come back to Arch Manning, who I think he played poorly. I mean, he's super talented. He will have better games, but he did not play his best game. And Arch Manning himself, even owning up to that, you know, we've got to get better and it's got to start with me. And Arch Manning, you're right. It does have to start with you, because it is okay in terms of Texas wanting to win a national championship this year because of an expanded playoff, that you did not have your best day in Columbus in the shoe against maybe one of the best defenses in the country. But now that you've got that loss, the margin for error is so much thinner moving forward in terms of keeping that path alive to be able to make it to the college football playoff and to have a chip in a chair when it comes to contending for the national championship. So the passing game has to take a step forward. It's got to be on Arch. It's got to be on his wide receivers, who were just absolutely clamped up by Ohio State secondary throughout much of the afternoon. So if Texas is one-dimensional, they can, no offense, Tommy, run through San Jose State. You know, they can go through a lot of their schedule and not face much resistance. But the big games, the ones that count, the ones against Georgia, the ones against Florida, the ones against Texas A&M, the one against Oklahoma, they're going to need more from their passing attack.
No offense taken. We were 2 touchdown favorites over Central Michigan at home, Spartans, and couldn't get it done last weekend. All right, let's get to the Battle of Death Valley, the Tiger Bowl. Brad, it went by the way of the Bayou Bengals, and Brian Kelly gets that sort of season opener off his back here. 3 first-place votes for the LSU Tigers. How impressive was their win over Clemson over the weekend?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any issue putting LSU number 1. I don't have a vote in the AP, but LSU looked the part in what I consider one of the toughest environments in college football. I was most impressed, not just with Garrett Nussmeier and his kind of coolness under pressure in the second half, but Blake Baker's new-look defense. A ton of transfer portal acquisitions. He's able to get the best out of Harold Perkins, former 5-star linebacker. Had a hurry late in that game on 4th down that kind of clinched it for LSU. That defense came up big, man. Clemson was down 7 points on 3 different possessions in the 4th quarter, and they had 2 turnover on downs and a punt. So, I mean, hats off to LSU's defensive product they put on the field, because the last couple of years, LSU's had no issue scoring points. It's been stopping the opposition, and Saturday night, that is a huge step forward for a program I consider to be one of the title front runners.
Chip, if I gave you the other side with Clemson, Dabo Swinney after the game said something like it's a final exam, and both LSU and Clemson didn't fare very well. They just scored a little bit better and got a little bit more points. What's sort of the Clemson takeaway for you from the loss there against LSU?
The Clemson Tigers right now have an issue at quarterback that is not going to be solved until the quarterback is able to do it himself. And there's not going to be many opportunities for Cade Klubnik to be able to answer that question. But there are going to be chances later in the year where the season is going to be hanging in the balance. And they've got a date against Florida State that looks a lot different coming out of week 1. They've got a game against South Carolina in Columbia that could have college football playoff implications. You know, they've got now a more narrow path to the college football playoff than they did if they had been able to hold and defend their home turf against LSU. But Cade Klubnik's performance against the best opponents that he has faced at a starting quarterback, and Cade Klubnik's performances against everybody else, there's a big gap right there. And look, Dabo Swinney said, by his own estimation, he thought that Cade Klubnik was just average, didn't play great. He also said, Two's a dude. He's going to bounce back. Don't worry, he'll have a better day. This is something that unfortunately has become a trend, because when it happens against Georgia, I'm like, well, yeah, that's Kirby Smart's Georgia Bulldogs. He kind of looked a little overwhelmed and in the moment. And while I 100% agree with Brad that Blake Baker's LSU defense is one of the biggest developments in terms of the SEC title race, I still think it's a different caliber of personnel than what he faced. What happens where you go up against the toughest competition and the game gets too fast? I mean, Tommy, it's like me when I play Pinehurst #2. Things start moving too fast and all of a sudden I lose my whole afternoon. And it just seems like as the competition gets tougher, Cade Klubnik really needs to get better at being able to meet the moment.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how it happened sequentially, right? Arch Manning has his game. He came into the weekend as the betting favorite for the Heisman. Next up was co-favorites Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik. And then, of course, it keeps going what we see on Saturday night. If we get to Sunday night, that was our third and final top 10 matchup of the weekend. And, Chip, I'll throw it right back at you. Give me a sense of what was the difference in Notre Dame and Miami, and you're good with the Canes moving up to number 5.
I am. I thought that was so impressive in terms of being able to take what was an absolute liability one season ago, the Miami Hurricanes defense, and with a change at coordinator, bringing in Corey Heatherman, with some influx of transfer portal talent, be able to have a group that made life very difficult for the Notre Dame run game, made life very difficult on CJ Carr, who I thought played pretty well considering the circumstances of his first start, and then for Carson Beck, very strong start to this game. But man, I tell you what, this is no argument with where they stand in the rankings right now, but Miami did a lot in that second half to try to hand that thing back to Notre Dame. This is still a coaching staff that we need to see be able to put the foot down and close teams out. So I'm looking at Miami, and I think it's a good thing that they were able to get out with the win for the overall program morale. I think they've answered a lot of their concerns, but they are still lacking some of the pieces, Cam Ward and those receivers included, that gave them one of the best offenses in the entire country. But thankfully, they don't have to go that hard offensively because of the improvements they've made on defense.
Yeah, and Brad, I mean, Chip brings up a good point that Mario almost crystal balled the game there at the end. He did mention the improved defense. Just give me the thoughts of what we saw at Hard Rock.
I mean, up front, they just dominated Notre Dame. Ruben Bain off the edge was an unblockable force. And really, Miami at the line of scrimmage, offensive line and the defensive side, they looked like the ACC elite that we thought Clemson was going to be going into week 1 with so many projected first-rounders. I think Miami has the best offensive line in the country. I've been pounding the drum all off season. Every source down there in Coral Gables has told me the same thing. We love our 5, and they looked really good Sunday night against what I consider a pretty good defensive line in terms of talent. And then, of course, Shannon Dawson, Carson Beck marriage. We're 1 week in, and it looks pretty good. Carson Beck played with confidence, something we did not see down the stretch last fall while he was at Georgia. So, yeah, Miami's a team that right now deserves to be among the elites.
Both of you guys, give me a quick thought on the Fighting Irish, Chip.
They'll be fine. They've got a big matchup this week's off. They're back against Texas A&M. But again, I think they chose C.J. Carr. We talked about his ability to push the ball vertically down the field. I was impressed with how they used him as a runner. I remembered about what Riley Leonard did, or when Mike Denbrock was at LSU with Jaden Daniels, or at Cincinnati with Desmond Ridder. There's a lot of when the game gets tight, they trust him to go make a play and be an athlete, and he stepped up and answered the call there.
Yeah, for me, when you have a Ferrari in the backfield like Jeremiah Love, why don't you take it 10, 12 times in the quarter mile? They didn't do it but 5 or – I mean, it was mind-boggling to me that Jeremiah Love was not more involved in this game plan. Marcus Freeman said after the game, we've got to find ways to get our best player of the football. And for me, Notre Dame 2 weeks from now, open date, and then A&M, that's a must-win game, because if Notre Dame starts 0-2 and then let's say they win out and go 10-2, they won't have a single win over a ranked team. No other opponent is inside the top 25 right now for Notre Dame. So we talk about the playoff resume, fellas. You lose to Miami, you lose to A&M. It's pretty barren from there out unless USC, maybe Navy and the American could be ranked. But that is a must-win game for Marcus Freeman, and I didn't think we'd be saying that here after week 1.
And they already had that sort of rebound season last year en route to getting that CFP run and getting all the way to the national championship game. Much more with these two guys in just a second, but a reminder about the college football insiders, all of our guys at CBS Sports, all together in one place. Scan the QR code and make sure to check them out ASAP.